Hey everybody, it's Catherine. Thank you for coming back to Smart Mouth. I wanted to give a shout out to the latest Patreon. His name is Shane Redzar. Shane, thank you so much. Anyone else, if you'd like to contribute to the Patreon, that is at patreon.com/smartmouthpodcast. And if you give even $1 a month there, you can get all of the Smart Mouth episodes a week early. Can you imagine? This week's guest is Eric Adjepong, who you definitely recognize from Top Chef. And everything he knows about West African cooking is so interesting, so enjoy! Hi, Eric.
What's going on? Hello, hello. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you doing?
I am maneuvering my way through 2020, trying to get out of it.
Oh my God, maneuvering. That's such a perfect way of saying it. Yeah. That's really good. So you're on the East Coast in Columbia, Maryland, which, as you were explaining to me, is sort of in between DC and Baltimore. Mm-hmm. Do you prefer one of those cities over the other?
Baltimore, I feel like scenically is probably one of the most beautiful cities in America. It's right near the water. The food is amazing. The spirit and the vibe is awesome. Baltimore is also going through a tough time as far as, food deserts and kind of where it's at in the national scale of like food insecurity. So it's a really interesting place to kind of be in, especially for me being like in the public health field. DC is just a completely different vibe. It's politicians, a lot of business happening during lunch meetings. There's a lot of shaking hands and, stuff like that. So there's just a little bit of a different mentality. Both of them are equally amazing experiences, really. And it's so cool that they're like pretty much less than an hour away from each other. And you really get to experience two of America's most like decorated yet, I guess, like historic places, honestly. DC is just chocolate city, right? When you go down and you see just the history and the culture and the people moving, and the protest was just happening a couple days ago. There's so much energy and life within DC. So it's a really cool place to be.
That's good that you got two awesome ones.
Yeah, I'm right in. And I mean, coming from New York as well spoils me, or can't spoil anybody, I guess. I mean, born and raised in New York and then moving down to DC first was cool. It wasn't that big of a shock, obviously. New York is just in and of itself a completely different beast. But I think all of it has been kind of crumbled down and kind of put to its knees, or at least a soft reset during COVID. So we'll see how the world kind of plays out in the next couple of months.
Yeah, we will see. I'm nervous. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I am. There's a lot of gray area. I think we're walking into the gray area now, back into the flu season. It's about to get cold again. And it's like in the next couple of weeks, I really feel like this is going to be a telltale sign of how this industry and our industry is going to kind of fare out for the next few months.
Yeah, I was going to say, so I feel like everyone who listens to this show probably recognizes you from Top Chef. You've done a couple seasons of that. You've been robbed at least once.
Oh, boy. Thank you.
I mean, I'm a fan of everyone, but your food seemed very interesting to me. Definitely a lot of flavors I was not familiar with. But you just said that you are in public health.
Yeah, kind of, a little bit of everything, to be honest. When I started my undergrad at Johnson & Wales, it kind of set a mission. I think my parents dropped a little bit of a bug in my brain as well, but just to kind of elevate, myself and really have a really secure landing spot, just in case the culinary things didn't work out.
Right.
My parents was very just cautious about that. So I went into the like public health nutrition, or excuse me, I went into culinary nutrition in undergrad, and I fell in love with it. To be honest, I really did. I kind of got into the rabbit hole, and when you know better, you do better, and just wanting to learn more. And that kind of morphed itself into a few years after, kind of coming back to New York, doing my circuit around different restaurants in the city. I decided to move to England, and we went to University of Westminster for a couple of years, and I studied international public health nutrition. So really just kind of bringing in the technical food and, making food taste delicious, but then also what is this doing to our bodies? What is this doing to a group of people, whether it's a city, a region, a state, a country, and how does it affect I guess the generations and generations from thereafter. So there was a lot of, I did a project on Baltimore, going back to that. I did a thesis in Ghana, just kind of focused on like the food insecurities in there. So it really is something now that I'm completely in love with and passionate about, having folks just get access to delicious food, healthy food, as often as they want. I think that shouldn't be a luxury. That should be something that everybody has afforded to them.
So was that sort of thing something that you were thinking about when you were on Top Chef, or was that just like straight up chefly flavor bomb them at every opportunity?
A little bit beforehand, I think. When I got the word about Top Chef, probably really unconventionally. Probably the oddest way anybody else has probably gotten on the season. I've heard some crazy stories of how people get casted. But for me, I was initially slated to be on season 15, the Denver season. And we went through the whole casting process, did an interview with them. I cooked for them. They loved the food. They reached out to me like literally the next day, and the ball was rolling. Meanwhile, I was actually getting married at the same time. So the first day of filming was actually on my wedding day. And
oh,
yeah. So we went through the whole process of casting, and they like picked the date they wanted me to get on and do the whole kind of thing. And yeah, they were like, okay, so May 21st, we're ready to go. And I'm like, wait, no, wait. It's just something I couldn't pass by. I have folks coming from literally all over the world. So,
right.
But the story made for itself. We stayed connected throughout the year. And really, when season 16 came around for Kentucky, a lot of the stuff that I did as far as like the preliminary interviewing things, I didn't really need to do again. So that made its way there. But to answer the question, I knew as soon as I got the word that I wanted to do something that represented me. I wanted to cook the food that I grew up eating, but also put like the more modern techniques and kind of spins on things. I watched Top Chef pretty much since season 3, and never seen anybody cook anything from Africa or any African food. And that's mind blowing to me. You have some of the best palates and the best judges, in the world, and they haven't any clue of some of the food that I was kind of introducing to them, which is okay. There's always a learning moment with stuff like that. But when you talk about like a competition, show, it kind of maybe subconsciously or kind of sets up a bias, where you're unfamiliar. And then if you see something like, I don't know, a pasta dish and a popular Asian dish or a popular Italian dish or a popular French dish, then you can kind of assimilate and connect to it. But if you see like fufu or watch it or something like that, then you're like, whoa, I have no idea about this. Let's talk to me about it before I go ahead and eat it. Then you kind of start to set up your own kind of biases, so to speak. So it is what it is, though. I think I did a great job presenting myself in the food and kind of my focal point. I could have honestly went in and cooked a bunch of modern French or modern American or modern Italian food, but I don't know if that would have made a big impact the way I did it right now.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it is good to set yourself apart.
Yeah. I always wanted to, if I was lucky enough, I always said to make the show, I wanted to do something that probably wasn't done off the rip, like off the bat. And then it was a risk, The first dish I made to him was like it's a West African kind of spicy condiment, exo saucy called shito. And I made it, and I had given it to Tom, and his eyes were like, whoa, like this is spicy, but it's so good. What is this I'm eating? And you could just tell like the neurons in his brain just like going off, and it was so cool.
That's especially bold because he famously can't deal with spicy food.
Yeah. I know. My very, very first thing that I served him, season 16, I was like, I'm going for it. Send me home now. That was it. But then I think I just gained the confidence throughout the season and learned about their palates a lot more, during the season and try to tailor the food that I made for that.
And you had plans to open a restaurant this spring, right?
I did. Everybody had plans this year.
Right. Yeah.
I had plans to open up on the Double, my first public restaurant in May this year. But it's funny. I made the announcement in March, like March 10, March 9. And then like a week after, the world kind of seemed to shut down. So, but you know what though? I'm not as bummed out, even though like it stinks to not have the restaurant open and not have things be as ideal as I wanted to or planned in the beginning of the year. I also know that a lot of friends and colleagues of mine in the industry are not in the best position as well, not in that position, and actually have restaurants open and brick and mortars open, and they're trying to figure out what to do with their staff and how they're going to pay their next bill. Like those are really, really deep issues. I mean, I'm in a really precarious situation, but I mean, I talk to my folks, the people that I know in the industry, and it's tough. You know, a lot of folks don't even know if they're going to open back their doors open. My very first chef that I worked for had to close down the restaurant. The second restaurant he just opened up like a couple of months prior. Like there's a lot of hurt going on within the industry. So I'm in it, but I'm also kind of playing it relative, you know, understanding where I play and my part, and also doing the best that I can to support, you know, James Beard Foundation and, you know, different coalitions that different cities around the country have, just to support their hospitality workers as well.
Yeah, it seems like you do a lot of different things. I don't know if you could be classified as having just the one job, because you also do private dinners as well. Yeah. And on your website, you have some of the sample menus, and one of them is the Taste of West Africa dinner. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering, in that dinner, are sort of all the regions of West Africa represented, or how do you choose what to put on that menu?
I focus on the region itself. I focus on so you'll have like different kind of representations from different countries kind of focused in the dish. So, but then also there's, you know, a lot of dishes that are just very like ubiquitous throughout the region. Like a Ghanaian may make jollof rice a little bit different than a Senegalese person or a Nigerian person, but it is all jollof, you know, kind of, I guess in the same way or same breath as like, you know, everybody's mom or grandma makes a different matzo ball soup or a different curry or blend, you know what I mean? So you'll have that. I think I tried my best to really explore that throughout the menu, and then also offer some newer things too, as far as like familiar flavors kind of paired with unfamiliar ways. You know, the curry corn bisque is something that a dish that I worked on right out of school. I love the deep flavors like a Caribbean curry, and then the sweetness of a corn, especially during the summertime. You know, I worked on that dish. I know how to cook it like the back of my hand. It's insane how many times. That was actually the dish that I made for Top Chef to get me in, and they loved it. But yeah, those are just kind of things I want to explore. And you know, flavors like grains of salam and alligator peppers kind of mashed up in like a creamy dessert or something like that. Something that's really, really unique and odd, but super tasty and has a really interesting story.
So can you tell me why? I live on the West Coast. I have my whole life, and there's not as much West African food here as there is on the East Coast. But I do know about jollof rice, which I'm glad you said first, because I thought it was jollof rice. So why is that dish such a big, important, everybody's heard of it dish?
It's huge. I think I call it the paella of the West African region. It's that like ubiquitous. It's that known. And if you know anything about paella to, you know, Spanish or Peruvian, just anybody in that area in Europe, this is like the lifeline. This is how people eat. This is how people commune. Jollof rice is very much the same. It's originally from the Wolof tribe in Senegal. And that dish, it's tomato based, blended up with ginger, garlic, curry powder. Some people put tomatoes in there. Some people put red bell peppers in there, tomato paste. But really, it's just like a really, really rich. Once it cooks down, it almost looks like a dark marinara sauce. And then you use that base. You add some rice to it, jasmine or basmati or whatever your blend is. Again, that's a different, depending on where you are within the region, different rices are used. And then, you cook that rice within that tomato base. You add to your favorite stock, chicken, vegetable, beef, whatever. Again, the sky's the limit. And it really is delicious. Some people, my mom, I think it's like a requirement that you have to tell that your mom makes the best jollof, because my mom does. And but she does it with like nutmeg and clove as well. She adds some like warm grounded spices to it, which I think I've never seen anybody do it, but it's absolutely delicious to me. So it's really, I mean, depending on where you go or who cooks it, you can get it in so many different ways with different proteins, chicken, goat, beef, whatever, vegetarian. Honestly, I've had it so many different ways, but it really is just like the base, the strong vessel. We add that red sauce back to the rice once it's done. And then you can add in some more protein. That red sauce really is just kind of like the base for a lot of things. We do our chichinga kebabs with that. Red stew, which is like a black bean and fried plantain, sweet plantain, like a vegan kind of dish, which is really delicious. Yeah, so many different things, but yeah, that's kind of the base right there. Jollof rice is king for sure, and we go to war for it, like hypothetically, but we go to great lengths to protect our jollof.
I mean, you might not be that far off because you're being very open-minded about all the different ways it can be served, but I've seen people get pretty uptight about the correct way to do it.
Oh yeah, it's I mean. Tomato. I really, just as long as it's good, I think. It's like, yeah, don't serve any bad jollof around me. I'll call you out for it. So, no, just as long as it's good, I think I've had it, like I said, in so many different ways. I've had jollof was just rice, peas, and carrots. And it was like some of the most amazing food, just for somebody who's a vegetarian and not trying to have any, made with like vegetable stock, and it's delicious. So it really all depends on, your kind of blend of your red sauce base, or your stew base. And then from there, how well you cook the rice. For my classes, I do online classes, and I teach a risotto, or jollof rice risotto. So another way to kind of pair something very untraditional with something people might recognize, put them together, and you have a really interesting dish. So that's the kind of a way that I've seen that work successfully to introduce West African food to like the Western palate.
Okay. So you mentioned the tomato sauce base. Is that the tomatoes and the onions and the chilies base?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. So I started off with tomato, like Roma tomato. We could do an onion in there, tomato paste. There's ginger, there's garlic, curry powder, Scotch bonnet or habaneros, and then your spices, nutmeg, clove. And then you let that cook down, a little bit of oil, and let that cook down for about 40 minutes or so, really just to kind of cook out all the raw flavor of everything that you just blended up. And then once all that raw flavor is kind of out, it's not as sharp, it's not as pungent, then you get the really beautiful mellow kind of flavor and the beautiful sweetness of the tomato and the onion and the ginger and the garlic. It just kind of mellows out. And then you season it at that point. And it really is it's one of those flavors that actually, it's one of those stews that develops flavors as it continues to like chill out and marinate. A lot of folks know about stuff like when you put it in the refrigerator, it actually tastes better the next day. That's one of those things right there. So usually I like to make the jollof rice like the day after I make the red sauce, just to kind of let those flavors just to chill out and melt and mend together. And then from there, you take that really beautiful base, that red stew, and then you add your rice to it, you add your stock to it, and then you just let it cook on a simmer for about 15, 20 minutes. And then you have something absolutely delicious and mind-blowing. It's really good.
And tomatoes are a base of a sauce for a lot of dishes in West Africa, correct?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
We do that for a lot of dishes in the region, for sure.
And you also mentioned Scotch bonnets. So is this a spicy dish?
It can be, yeah, depending on your preference. Really, it's one of those things where if your spice level or tolerance is really high, you can go ahead and add a little bit more of it. There's so many different ways that you can kind of create and tailor that red sauce to be specifically you. So some may have it a little bit sweeter than the others. If you love like the flavor, the pungency from the ginger or the garlic, when I teach the class, I always encourage people just to kind of make it taste as delicious as they want, really. I don't have my recipes be like a guideline or anything. They're not set in stone. So if you're one of those people that go to, foodnetwork.com and look at a recipe for mom's lasagna and it says use 3 cloves of garlic and you're laughing at yourself because you already know that you're going to use 9, go ahead and use 9. Like, do it. I want you to make this. I want you to really like make it as delicious as you want. And then I'll just kind of teach you ways to kind of balance it. If there's too spicy, then we might need to add a little bit of tomato. If you add it with, if you want a little bit more pungency, then I might, tell you to add some onions or garlic, whatever the case is. So yeah, either way, kind of getting back to the class, I just make sure that everybody feels really comfortable doing it. But yeah, honestly, at the end of the day, it's really up to you and how well you want it, or how spicy or how sweet or how, whatever you want.
Yeah. That's good. That's probably too much freedom from some people. For some people, I know that a lot of people like strict rules about how to do it.
I totally agree. And that's why I kind of just like, okay, if you're one of those people that's like, all right, no, I need you to tell me what to do, A, B, C, D, then yes, go ahead and make it happen that way. But you're absolutely right. I've noticed that as well. There's people that just get paralyzed by the options, you know?
Yeah.
Like, salt? I don't know. Yeah, so, yeah.
So I have a question about another ingredient, and that is hibiscus leaf. Just because if you Google that, you're going to think that it is like the secret to immortal life. Like, apparently it's good for everything. So what do you think it's good for?
It has a lot of medicinal purposes that I've read as well. But really, culinary wise, I use it to make a drink called sorrel or sabolo. Depending on where you are in the region, depending on where you are in the diaspora, honestly, you can be in the Caribbean, West Indies, you'll find this drink. Started, again, West Africa, the hibiscus leaf specifically is like a Nigerian one. I know a lot of the Western markets that kind of sell hibiscus leaves are getting it from Nigeria. But anyway, in Nigeria, it's called zobolo. In Ghana, it's called sobolo with the S or Z. Some places in the Caribbean and the West Indies, it's called bissap or sorrel. It's literally called so many different things, but it's the same drink. It's this sweetened tea with the hibiscus leaves. We add pineapple, cinnamon sticks, clove, orange, ginger, orange rind, ginger, lemon juice, lime juice, orange juice. And you cook all that down, and then you strain it out, sweeten it up with some sugar, and you have your drink right there. That's the base. And it's absolutely freaking fantastic. And then if you feel festive, you can add a little bit of dark rum to it or some gin. Yeah, it's really just kind of the perfect way to bring some people together. It's a really interesting drink. I teach that class. I teach the drink actually in a Caribbean class that I do online as well. But yeah, it's such I think it's one of those ingredients that kind of transcends the diaspora. You'll see it all throughout, and it kind of lets me know that, like, even though we're all spread apart right now, at some point we're all kind of cooking the same things. We're all using the same products. Same thing with cassava or peanuts, or yuca or anything like that. There's so many different applications for these ingredients throughout the diaspora in South America as well, that you'll see just really honestly through the lineage and migration of slaves, and kind of where they've landed and how they cook food and what ingredients they use. And if they weren't able to get those ingredients in their new land, what did they use to kind of as a substitute? And you'll find it in kind of just like a tree that kind of branches out really, really interestingly. So that's like a little food history behind the bissap or the hibiscus leaf right there.
Yeah, and I know that the original Juneteenth, it was the red drink that was consumed then, and so a lot of people still use it to make specifically like the red drink on Juneteenth.
Absolutely.
That's something I know because someone wrote an article about it for the Smart Mouth newsletter. A little plug in there.
That's very cool. A little plug. I like that.
Yeah, it was a very interesting article.
Bring it all together. And I mean, no, it's true though. I mean, you mentioned Juneteenth, but the impact that obviously African food and the food of the African diaspora has had on like the New South and honestly just throughout the America, it's huge. So it's cool to see those traditions held, even if it's annually in Juneteenth, and it's actually something that's celebrated, during those really big celebrations or moments annually every year. In the Caribbean, it's like a Christmas drink. And, when you go different parts of Africa, you'll find it, celebratory reasons and stuff like that. So it's good to see that there's still a little bit of tradition behind the actual like drink or the actual like, food, which is nice.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I know that the answer is racism, but the diaspora, if you look at West African food and then all the places around the entire planet that it's gone and how much it's influenced food globally, it is strange that it itself doesn't get more shine, because it's kind of the basis for so many different cuisines around the world.
I agree. I say all the time, Africa, the second biggest continent in the world, yet the food is so unknown. That's a problem. and it's an issue for me. So just kind of taking the skills and the knowledge that I have, I feel a duty to kind of help represent and highlight, these foods. There's so many. I mean, between the grits, the shrimp and grits that we eat, and the gumbo that we eat, or you go to Louisiana and you have jambalaya. Like, these are all West African like staples. Jollof rice is the same thing as jambalaya. When you go to Senegal, they make a gumbo with okra and it's absolutely delicious. And you go to different places in New Orleans and you're literally tasting the same kind of process and technique. South Carolina in the Gullah Geechee region and the food that they make. I've had food from BJ Dennis, a chef out there in South Carolina and in the Gullah Geechee region, which is like another African tribe that's literally here in the United States. And I've had some food from BJ Dennis that quite literally reminded me of like my grandma. And this guy's like my age. Like he's an amazing cook. Probably, I say this often, he's probably one of the best cooks in America, but probably a lot of people don't know it. And he makes rice, simple rice, tastes amazing. So it's there's a lot of representation here. There's a lot of influence from African food that needs to be explored and talked about and not forgotten. I think that's important as well.
Yeah, and actually, like, you're fighting a double uphill battle with this, because when I was doing research for this episode, usually what happens is that I research something and I find a lot of information about the dish. But what I found instead in like the academic journals, there was a really influential anthropologist named Jack Goody, and he was working in the 1950s, and he said that Ghana in particular and all of West Africa didn't have food culture. Because he said, first of all, society wasn't stratified, that everyone was at the exact same level, which I think just at face value doesn't make sense, because I did double check. There's royalty in Ghana. So there are people who are richer than other people.
Absolutely, yeah.
Ghana.
Absolutely.
So it's just crazy that this idea that like the food culture, that they eat food, but there isn't a food culture, like just this one person said it. And then apparently every anthropologist after him believed it. Not every, there were a couple that.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think in and of itself, there was one, but it wasn't necessarily coined. It wasn't like branded. It's not like catchy. It's not like, when did you say that this article was written?
Oh, so this was a paper that was written in the 50s. In the
50s. Okay. So really, industrialization and modern modern industrialization really happened in the late 70s, towards like the 80s in Ghana. Where folks were moving a lot more out of the house and cooking and more into the streets and cooking. So street vendors and markets, Makola markets, started getting really big around that time. Ironically enough, this is the same time that Nestle came over and started introducing the Maggi cube or bouillon cube, which is kind of like still to this day is a part of almost of the food culture. Like, you'll go around and you'll see these Maggi products and billboards like Beyonce's coming or something like that. It's amazing. But this is it. You see street vendors dressed out in like Nestle Maggi Cube aprons, and it looks like a branded thing. But back to the food culture, I think there is every country, every place, any place that you go has some sort of culture, whether you like it or not. It's there. People are eating things. People are eating dishes on a cyclical base, right? Like, I'm not gonna have fufu and not have it again in Ghana. Like, I'm gonna eat it again. Like, this is a part of the culture. This is a part of my routine. So these dishes are there, and whomever this person was back in the 50s just may not have been able to kind of see it. And really, like, who cares? I'm over here like this. I think I've done enough sample research on my own, whether coming to DC and doing like West African food classes, street food classes, and seeing the influx of people coming in and being interested and selling out these classes like hotcakes. I've seen the success I've done on Top Chef. I've seen, traveling and cooking and making this food. I've seen how amazed people have been. So like, I don't necessarily need to hear, like you, I guess, some random guy in the 50s that probably didn't stay there much longer in a couple of weeks, telling me about the food from where I come from. But, I do appreciate his opinion.
Oh, you don't have to appreciate his opinion. I think it's a bummer that he clearly had so much influence. It's weird. I mean, he's from Cambridge, so I think people just assume that
Oh,
he
it
knew what he
happens that
was
way.
talking.
Yeah. It happens that way. I mean, it is. That's why representation matters. Like it's so kind of going back to the judging, right? Like you can't have if you don't know something, or you don't know the understanding or the background of it, and then you're going to go try to tell somebody else or teach somebody else, you're starting off on the wrong foot. And when you don't have an understanding of what the food is like, and or what the people who are eating the food or making the food are like, then there's a huge kind of like contextual gap, and whatever you're going to write, that's going to be missing. And I feel like people will read it and feel that as well. They'll feel that disconnection.
Yeah, that's interesting. Actually, I was wondering if you had plans for a cookbook, partly because what I read repeatedly is that cookbooks in Ghana aren't a big thing because actually the idea there is, or traditionally it was, if you don't know
Mm.
the recipes by heart, you aren't a real cook. So they aren't written down so
I
much.
think I think really it's more so, man, this can go back in so many different ways. Like cookbooks aren't necessarily a big thing in Ghana and the West African region, because we we communicate, or we tell stories, or we pass information through generations orally. It's an oral. I don't even know the best way to describe it, but just and the way that you had information from your grandma or your grandma's grandma passed down to you, maybe through like she scribed it in a little book for herself how to make, I don't know, cornbread or muffins or biscuits or whatever. This stuff is just orally passed down, especially when slave trade was happening. There's not really much space to write and to put things together, and you know you're worried about other things keeping your
Right.
life together. Yeah. So there's a lot of things I feel like that I've missed, and kind of through that tragic and through that traumatic experience has kind of almost set its way, I don't know how to explain myself, but kind of set new ways in how we just keep tradition. Like we feel comfortable not writing things anymore. Like this is the way it is. You know what I mean? So yes, to go back, I'm definitely interested in writing the cookbook and then kind of bring those traditions, bring those things that I've learned. Because even me, like right before I went to Top Chef, I called my mom like, hey, explain to me one more time. How do we do this? How do we do that? Like she didn't write it down. My mom never wrote down any single recipe for me, but yet I mean, the stuff that she's told me, I've written it down, and I've kind of like, in a more standardized way to do this. So if I were to teach another cook, they can go ahead and make a very, very similar version to what my mom has done. That's important. But for my mom, it's not. Like she can just tell me, because the same way her mom told her and her mom's mom told her, and she remembered it. I mean, to me, I think that's actually more impressive, like to keep all that information in your head rather than to have it in a few books and kind of just go at it whenever you want. My mom knows these recipes like the back of her hand. Like that's imperative.
So you're definitely going to be introducing these recipes to people who don't have experience with them, because
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of I just noticed in the past couple of years. Like I also exchange like the chef hat with the educator hat. I'm teaching people like, hey, this is this ingredient, that's that ingredient. This is why we eat it this way, whatever the case is. And really, at the end of the day, I'm not teaching new math or new algebra to you or new like science to you. It's food. It's at the end of the day, you have a mouth, you know how to eat, like you know how to use utensils. Like go in and dig in, explore for yourself, and then if you have questions and want to talk. And I think that's the beauty about it in a communal sense when you're eating, like to eat like, oh my god, this is really good, tell me about it, what are you having, and you're sharing, and you're like going in and you're reaching for somebody else's plate. Like that's what I love, that natural organic kind of coming around the food and eating, and not necessarily feeling so technical about things, like whatever, like let's just eat, let's enjoy ourselves, let's enjoy the moment, move on from there.
So I guess my last and most important question for you is
Oh my gosh. These have been great questions. I've really enjoyed myself.
Good, I'm glad. When you make fufu, do you use a food processor?
Ooh, I have done it, but it's not the ideal way. I have done it before. I traditionally would make fufu either by like pounding the yam and the plantain, like a mortar pestle type of But if you don't have that around, then you need some other mechanical force, because if you try to do it by hand, you're gonna end up looking like Popeye. So just get just get it done. Just get it done. Work smarter, not harder.
Right.
But there is a technique. There is a little bit of technique when you're doing it with a food processor or like a KitchenAid, because you don't want to develop too much gluten. You don't want to develop like too much elasticity in the fufu. And when you work with a food processor, just because how crazy it can, spin, 10 seconds, and that's almost like the equivalent of you like kneading or working it for 5 minutes or whatever. So you just got to play around with it. I think there's obviously a little bit more feel when you're doing it manually and mechanically that you get. But yes, I've made mine in a food processor. My mom won't be proud.
Have you ever done it with potato flakes?
I have not, but I've had people serve me fufu with potato flakes. I don't like it.
Okay.
I don't like it.
Is that like a substitute when you?
Hear me out though. It is a great substitute. Preferably, I don't like it, but it is a great substitute. If you don't have like cassava or plantains around, and I know like that sounds oxymoronic, but I just think that if you're gonna have it, it's like eating a cheeseless lasagna. Like let's go all out. Let's make it happen. Yeah. Okay,
I get that. That does sound like a bummer.
Yeah, it could be good, but really, you know what I'm here for.
Yeah. Yeah, completely. Well, Eric, thank you so much for joining me. Can you tell people where they can find you on social media and whatnot?
Absolutely, Catherine. I had a great time speaking with you. Thank you so much for bringing me on your platform. Website, www.chefadjepong.com, ChefAdjepong.com. And then on socials, my handle is Chef, on Instagram, Chef Eric Adjepong. On Twitter, Chef Adjepong. And a bunch of information on the classes always popping up, and just through social as well. So
So they're online classes, so anyone can take them.
Anybody can take them. Yes, correct. Thank you for asking. So anybody can take them. I post the classes online on the virtual tab on my website, and they go through the whole gambit, really. Brunch classes, dinner classes. We do some like kid-friendly stuff, some like West African classics. Do a beautiful the risotto that I mentioned. My literal favorite thing to eat, bofro. It's like a donut, West African donut. I don't do that class as often because I end up eating through the whole batter, like the donut batter, and it's just really, really bad. So I try.
Well, maybe if enough people request it, you'll have to do it again.
Yeah, it's a scary class, really. It gets to dark places, Catherine, really quickly. We do it like a delicious vanilla anglaise, and just it's so good.
It sounds amazing.
It does. It really is. But I can't keep doing that class. I really can't. No, but it's a lot of fun, and folks from literally all over are signing in. California, LA, Colorado. I had people I had a class, a lady from Saudi Arabia and Canada and Ghana, which signed up, which is amazing. I did a class, it was like 3 p.m. Eastern, and it's 3 a.m. over there in Saudi Arabia. And she's like making this dinner as the sun is coming up, like connecting people. And it may not be cool to you, but absolutely mind blowing to me. It was so cool. And also so appreciative. So
that is cool.
Yeah, they're a lot of fun, and each class is really unique, and different people signing up and just kind of zoning out for an hour and a half, and kind of cooking with me, or cooking with the spouse or a friend or whoever. It's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. All right, yeah. So everybody should go check those out. And Eric, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening, everybody. Here are the sources that I used for this episode. The books included one called Stirring the Pot, A History of African Cuisine. Another one was called Wanderings in West Africa. And then there was also another one called Cooking, Cuisine, and Class, A Study in Comparative Sociology. But see, that's the one by Jack Goody. So, I'm not telling you where to buy it or anything. And then also there was a review of Goody's book in the London Review of Books. And then also a paper written by Keith Hart at the Max Planck Institute for Social Anthropology that was called Jack Goody's Vision of World History and African Development Today. So all of those sources together were very helpful for me. I also used what is called the African Culinary Network, Batumi. And then the Washington Post, the Guardian, and the New York Times all had great articles as well. Please join me on Instagram at SmartMouthPodcast. The Patreon is at patreon.com/smartmouthpodcast. And the newsletter is smartmouth.substack.com. And please do subscribe to that, whether you want to do a paid subscription or a free subscription. Both are great. Smartmouth is a production of Table Cakes, a woman-owned Los Angeles-based podcast company. Smartmouth is hosted and produced by me, Catherine Spires, and engineered by Mika Grimm. Check out all of our shows at tablecakes.com. A Table Cakes production.